Let us start. It's 3:01. So I'm Shantanu Dixit from Prayas Energy Group, and let me extend a very warm welcome to all of you. We are fortunate to have Ganashyamji Prasad, Chairman Central Electricity Authority, who has kindly agreed to launch this India Transmission Portal. He certainly needs no introduction for any power sector stakeholder. He has over 30 years experience in the power sector, including transmission sector, and his contributions to many reform initiatives in the recent years are very well known. Along with him, we also have Mr. Rajput, Mr. Sharan, and Mr. Bairwa from Power Systems Group of CA, who have given valuable guidance for the development of the India Transmission Portal and have given many suggestions to improve the transmission portal in coming months. So I warmly welcome the entire CA team also. We are honored to have a very distinguished panel with long experience and exceptional contribution in the Indian power transmission sector for today's discussion. So I welcome you all, dear panelists, also for accepting our invitation and actually at a very short notice. So I really appreciate that support. I welcome all participants for joining today's session. And as I see, we already have crossed 100 participants. We currently have about 115 participants who have joined this session. And I warmly welcome all participants for joining this launch event of the India Transmission Portal. Now, very briefly about the portal and what our thought process was in terms of developing the portal. We all know that power transmission is one of the most complex parts of the entire electricity sector. And with intermittent renewables, variably renewable share significantly increasing in the entire power system, transmission sector is attaining greater importance. If we have to really ensure a cost optimized power sector which benefits consumers, which allows really benefiting from the falling cost of renewables, then transmission is going to be a very critical infrastructure requirement for achieving this objective. And reflecting this, the power transmission sector is witnessing very rapid growth in capacity and in coverage across India. And at the same time, it presents a unique set of opportunities as well as challenges because of the nature of the transmission network that we need to build, which is ready to meet all our energy and reliability needs in coming decades. So in that context, having a systematic and timely sharing of accurate data is key for optimal planning, for giving adequate information to developers, for ensuring that adequate investment flows in the sector. And for this purpose, several national and state agencies have been working relentlessly in the transmission sector. And ours is a modest attempt and contribution in that spirit to facilitate a portal which will act as a one-stop information source for all stakeholders about the Indian power transmission system. And that was the primary, and that remains the primary purpose of developing this portal. This is a collaborative initiative of Prayas Energy Group with technical support from Idam Infrastructure Advisory and under the guidance of Central Electricity Authority. This portal provides easy access regarding transmission policies, regulations, data related to transmission planning, performance and tariff at central level and state level. And this is going to be a continuous process. We'll continue to update and keep this portal live for many years to come. And with that spirit, we are working on this portal. After this, we will have a formal launch of the portal followed by a short presentation and demo of the portal. Ashwin will coordinate that session. And after that, we will have a panel discussion and a Q&A session. Now, before I hand over to Ashwin, a short housekeeping announcement to ensure smooth session. I would request all participants to enter their questions in the Q&A box. Questions should ideally be of broad nature, which should be of interest to number of participants, so that we can take up those questions and we will ask those questions to panelists and then they can respond to those questions. Any specific question, we can discuss bilaterally or even after the webinar. We'll be happy to respond to any specific question. So with that, I will stop this welcome note. And once again, I warmly welcome all of you for joining this launch of the India Transmission Portal. And now I hand over to Ashwin to start his short presentation, and then request Honorable Ghanshyamji Prasad sir to kindly launch the portal. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Shantanu, for that context setting and welcoming everyone. I'm really thrilled to see we have over 157 participants already joined with us. So this really speaks to the interest of this initiative. We will now first move to the launch of the transmission portal officially by Chairperson CEA, and then go to this presentation. Sir, I'm handing over the remote control to you. Please let me know when you get the control.
Yeah, I have already got it.
Yeah, sir, you can go ahead and officially launch the portal now. Thank you so much, sir, for launching the portal. And thanks a lot again for your support, for the Power Systems team support in guiding us to make this a much better portal along with Idam Infra. So now I will quickly move through the presentation and give you an overview, all the participants an overview of what the portal is about, what all features it has, what all you can use in the portal. And then we will move on to Sir's keynote address after this short presentation. So the India Transmission Portal, as we understand, is one of the first initiatives, a national level knowledge repository focused only on power transmission. And it has two things. Mainly, it has all the relevant documents, policy documents, regulatory documents, judicial orders, research reports, as well as data. And data in a much more interactive format, which can make graphs and charts much more interactive and insightful for researchers, for policymakers, and other stakeholders interested in the power transmission sector. And if you look at the coverage, we are covering the central sector as well as 11 states for now, 11 large states. And as Shantanu said, this is just the beginning of the initiative. We plan to continue to add more states, increase coverage of documents, data, so on and so forth. So that is the very high level coverage in terms of the transmission portal. If you look at in terms of the modules, we have around 7 modules. So you have policy, commercial, regulatory, which have the bulk of the document. So if you look at the first blue shaded, you have over 90 documents in the regulatory section, around 76 documents in the tariff section, which are all the state ARRs and POC tariff documents. So a total of 231 documents are listed on the portal under these 7 modules. And around 120 of these documents, we have prepared very short summaries, especially on the regulatory. So all the regulations, we have made summaries which are much more usable, because some of these regulations can be very long. So you can read the summaries of these long regulations online. And also the policy documents have been summarized. So you have around 120 summaries that you can look at on the website. And the third section is basically the visualizations, the data, which we have created charts in a software called Tableau, which are very interactive. So you can choose, the user can choose what year they want to see, what voltage they want to see, what geography they want to see, and make those charts interactive and don't download them. You will see there are over 92 distinct visualizations or graphs that we have made just on transmission, and the bulk of them are in the planning section. So that gives you the overall high level view of what the India Transmission Portal is about. Moving ahead, So just to give you a little more detail about the first three modules, which are the policy, commercial and regulatory modules. So in the policy section, you have policy documents like the Electricity Act, the planning rules that recently MOP came up with, the national tariff policy, electricity policy, the bidding guidelines, all the sections which are only related to the transmission that have been summarized here. In the commercial section, you have the standard bidding documents, you have project announcements, you have the bid process coordinators, so on and so forth. And in the regulatory section, you have various regulations of CA and CERC, as well as the state regulations. So you have the state grid codes, you have the open access regulations or the tariff regulations. All of them are categorized under these three. So as I said, you can download around 130 documents, the PDF documents, and the summaries of around 120. And as we go ahead, we'll add to this. Now, the next three modules, which is the tariff, the performance, and the planning modules, these are largely data visualization. So this data has been aggregated from various documents and orders, which are in the public domain, which have been put by CEA, the CERC and state regulators, the CTU and the STUs, POSOCO and CTU. So this data has been taken from all these agencies. And what we have done is made interactive visualizations. As I was saying, you can select different time periods, voltages, ownerships, and then make the graph the way you want to look at it and even download the graph. And I will give you a demo of how it looks on the website. So just to give a little more detail of the visualizations, you have visualizations in the tariff module, which shows the transmission charges in terms of long-term charges, medium-term and short-term charges at the central and state level. You have the ARRs of the transcos in these 11 states for 4 years, and we'll add more recent ones in the coming months as well. In terms of planning, essentially you get to see what is the progress in terms of line length that was added, the transmission capacity that was added over the years, over quarters, which entity is adding more, which state is adding more. So very detailed granular breakup of this progress is seen. You also have interstate and state level planning for current and future years that we get from POSOCO and STUs. And in terms of renewables, specifically the recent CEA report on 500 gigawatts of renewables and the transmission planning for that data we have broken up, and even the green energy corridor status from MNRE. And finally, in terms of performance, we get to see transmission losses and availability data from state transcos from the SERC orders and the transfer capability from POSOCO. And I'll show you some of these graphs. So these are the visualizations. And the last module is the resources module, which we have 24 documents. So there are research reports, there are judicial orders, there are some independent research reports as well, which you can see. And we also have a glossary of around 30 terms, and we'll keep adding to that. So that is very briefly what the India Transmission Portal, how it is organized, what are the various modules, sub-modules, visualizations, and I'm sure as the stakeholders look at it, they will see far more rich details in that. So this is my last slide, and I will now move very quickly to show you the actual website that CERT has launched. And I will also encourage people to write to us at this email address, energy@prayaspune.org, for any suggestions. So if some data has been missed, if you see any discrepancy, any new report that we have missed, or any suggestion that you have in terms of how this portal can be made much better going ahead, we really welcome these suggestions. So I'm going to stop sharing the slide deck for now and share my screen in terms of the actual website now. Just give me a minute. Can you see my site now? Yeah, so this is the portal that Sir just launched. So on the top frame, you can see these 7 modules. So that is policy, commercial, regulatory, tariff, performance, planning, and then resources. I just explained that. So these are the 7 modules, and you have around 50 sub modules. What you see the drop down menu, you see that those are the sub modules. Now, if you look at policy, I'll just give you an example. So if you look at the competitive bidding guidelines, if you click on that, you will see that the competitive bidding guidelines were put out by MOP in 2006, and then the revised ones are in 2021. So if you look at the 2006 document, you will see the first option you get is you can download this document on the top, and then you get a summary of it. And on the left hand side, you see an index. So as you scroll down while reading the summary, the index also gets highlighted. So which is the section that you're reading. And then come the amendments. So the 2006 guidelines were amended. This is the first amendment. You get to see the date of the amendment, what clauses were changed. You can even download that amendment. So this one was amended in 2007. Then you have the second amendment in 2008, the third amendment, fourth amendment, fifth amendment, so on. So you can download each of the amendments, and you can also read the summary. And similarly, then if you go to the 2021 document, you have a summary. Now the 2021 document has not yet been amended. So this is the only one document. Now, if you look at regulatory section, let's say the CRC GNA regulations, which were just put out last year, which is a very important change in the regulatory structure. So you will see again, you can see the state-wise GNA regulations here. Now, if you go to the actual tariff regulations, you will see all the states being shown here. So you can go to any particular state and see the tariff regulations of that state. Similar summaries will be available. You can go to the grid code, state-wise grid codes. Again, you can see for those 11 states. So in the regulatory section, you can see a lot of CEA regulations on safety, on standards, on connectivity. All of these has been summarized and put here for download as well. In the commercial section, you can look at the bidding documents, the RFPs and the TSA, the project announcements. And in the future, we are also doing an analysis of the ISTS projects under TBCB route. So that is still under progress. Now, if you look at in terms of the visualization, this was on the document side. If you look at the visualizations quickly, I will show you the annual progress. So if you look at, let's say, the transmission lines, the annual progress. So you can see this graph here. So you from 2012 to 2023, you can see the annual progress. What is the plan, program, and what was the achievement? Similarly, you can look at quarterly progress or even monthly progress. So if you look at the monthly progress, you can get an entire snapshot of 10 years and 12 months. And you can select which voltage you want to select or which sector you want to select. If you only want to look at the progress in the state sector or only in the private sector or only for 400 kV, you can customize the graph the way you want it and look at the data and even download this. You have quarterly progress as well. So this is in terms of progress. Similarly, we have entity-wise progress as well. So beyond just voltages and ownership, if you want to go to the actual individual entity, so let's say you select year FY23 and you want to look at how has UPP TCL done in terms of transmission line for this year. So if you hover on, if you put your cursor on that graph, you will see that 1400 kilometers was added and the target was 1000. So they have exceeded the target. Or if you look at PGCIL, they have met 70% of the target. So again, here you will see progress entity wise. Now, another interesting part here is you can look at the transmission line, and here on the top, you see year wise progress, but you can actually select a year. If you select a year, you will see the same year reflected in the bottom graph, but the breakup quarter wise. And then if you actually select a quarter, you will see the actual quarter details broken up by ownership in the graph next to it. So you can really drill down the way you want. On the bottom also, you can actually select one particular entity and see what happened in which year, how much was the target, how much was the achievement, and so on and so forth. So this is in terms of planning. Another very interesting set of visualizations is from the CEA report for 500 gigawatt renewables, which was recently put out. Now, as you well know, there are 3 phases of transmission planning. One is the 66 gigawatts and 55 gigawatts, which is underway, and the 181 gigawatts, which is under planning. So if you look at the 66 gigawatt on the left, the India map, you will see the states and the colors where that RE capacity and transmission planning is happening. Now, if you click on a particular state, let's say I clicked on Rajasthan, then you get the district-wise breakup. So how much does Jodhpur have? How much does Jaisalmer have? How much does Bikaner have? And then below that, you will see the actual location. So the pooling substation, say in Jaisalmer, you have Fatehgarh 1, Fatehgarh 2, Fatehgarh 3. And even if you hover on one or click on one of them, you can see the actual details of the transmission project. So what is being built in Fatehgarh? Is it transmission lines or substations? What are being built? What is the distance? So on and so forth. You can see in the details below. Now, if you look at the 181 gigawatt breakup, again, a similar graph on the left, but let's say you click on Maharashtra this time. So you have 7.5 gigawatts, but on the right, you can see the pooling substations. So where it is going, Dhule, Osmanabad, and then the colors show whether the RE capacity is solar, wind, or storage. And there are 3 phases, something till 2023, 27, and 2030. So you get a phase-wise breakup, you get a resource-wise breakup. So similar data broken up in different ways. So these are the ways in which you can look at these graphs. And the final thing I will show in terms of the graphs is this interregional transfer capacity, the data which is put out by POSOCO. So right now it's the total transfer capacity, TTC. And we have this data is given month-wise, but we have put it quarterly. So the latest data for March 2023. So you can look at the corridors, let's say western region to southern region. What is the TTC? It's around 11,000 megawatts at the end of March 2023. So you can change the months. You can look at what parameters. So instead of TTC, you want to look at ATC. You can change that. So all that is there. So this is in terms of the visualizations. And finally, in terms of resources, the 24 reports are there. The same report that I was talking about in terms of the 500 gigawatt RE capacity, you can download the report. Image is given, or the report put out by IIT Bombay and POSOCO in terms of the assessment of inertia in the system, or various task force PGCL reports in terms of planning and implementation. Various reports are there, 24 reports are there. This is a suggestion given by Mr. Sooni because he was very keen to have all these kinds of reports and data in one place. So that is it in terms of my update in terms of showing the website. I'll stop sharing now. And now I will request the chairperson, Shri Ghanshyam Prasad, to deliver his keynote address. And we are really very glad. As we can see, we have over 215 participants. We're really happy to see the performance. Sir, over to you.
Very, very warm good afternoon. Shantanu.
So your voice is coming in and out. We can't hear you well.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, this is good.
I'll come closer to the mic. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me thank Prayas and all the teams of Prayas and my team in CA to have developed this India transmission portal. This is definitely need of the hour. And as we are transitioning from fossil fuel to the non-fossil fuel, and everybody keeps talking about the energy transition. So the entire perspective, it was easier to transit from the source side, that is from coal, from gas, from hydro towards solar, wind, etc., etc. But it had a lot of challenge which was thrown to the transmission segment of the entire power sector value chain. And that challenge was the gestation period, the manner in which the planning used to happen, the implementation part, the visibility to the to the developers, RE developers, as well as to the transmission lines developer. All these challenges started kicking in. Because earlier what used to happen is all the conventional power plants, they used to take at least 4 to 5 years or 6 years time to come on bar. So there used to be something on the ground on these generating stations. And transmission line used to take off so slightly later, maybe after 1 or 2 years of generation project visibility already is there on the ground. And it used to be easier for transmission line people to match their commissioning with the generating capacity, so that there is no stressed or stranded capacity of generation which is there. Everything was fine, everything was going well. But the moment we introduced that, okay, we need to go for renewables and switch more capacity and give more focus to the renewable sector, particularly the solar and wind, whose gestation period reduced to around initially it was around 24 months, then later it was also brought down to 18 months. And building a transmission line in 18 months is definitely a challenge. Probably if each developer, they will raise their hand and say that we can't build the transmission line in 12 months or 18 months. So then the question came in ministry, and I was at that time looking after transmission. And the question that came was, how do we really tackle this particular issue? Because visibility of the RE developers will definitely come later when they really decide to put that plant. By the time they decide, there is no visibility of the transmission. And then there is going to be a mismatch. There will be a stranded capacity. The solar will come, whereas the transmission will not be able to come. So a lot of churning happened with the planners, with the regulators, with the developers, with the bid process coordinators, etc., etc. And we started finding a solution to that. And then we came with a broad slogan and the aim, that is transmission ahead of generation, which means that we'll plan the transmission not based on what is actually there on the ground, but based on the potential which is likely to be harnessed in that particular area. So that became the buzzword somewhere around 4 years from now. And we started working on that principle, and we succeeded to some extent. Another challenge that came is the visibility of the plan itself, where these capacities are going to come, where the RE developer plan. So there has to be a close coordination between the transmission developer and the RE developer, so that both of them are in sync for this. And that is how we started building small programs, whether it was a small program of say 60 megawatt, around 60 megawatt, or going to next step. And ultimately what we thought is, once the nearest target of 500 gigawatt by 2030 is very clear in our mind, why not we go for that kind of a construct and announce this program? Could be in phases, and which CA had done it, and they have divided the entire structure into 3 phases, so that there is not sudden burden to the consumers in terms of transmission tariff suddenly rising because of a lot of transmission lines getting built at a very short span of time. And that is how the phasing was done. And we brought a visibility of how to achieve 500 gigawatt. And we kept a margin also. And that is how you will see that the plan is of 537 to 38 gigawatt of RE itself, which means that even nuclear is not included in this particular thing. So once the visibility started coming into the sector, then there are new players that also keeps on entering into the sector. What we found is there are some RE developers, they also wanted to enter into the transmission space, and they also needed some kind of a visibility. And any new player definitely is lost in the entire sea of informations that the power sector has. And number of organizations that the power sector has, which has a different role to play in the development of the transmission line itself. Say, for example, if I take for today's topic of transmission, there is a planner, CA, CTU. State level, you'll find STU. There are regulators, central regulators and state regulators. You will have bid process coordinators. You will have a number of things which is coming in the way. Or most important, which mostly people don't touch upon, is the manufacturers of the equipment of the transmission segment. Of course, is the association which is coordinating with the manufacturers. But the thing that the equipments are available to the transmission developers so that the transmission lines are commissioned in time. Off and on, you all must have been seeing or hearing about certain shortages, particularly in terms of CRGO or in terms of some type of bushings, etc., etc. So all these things needs to be tackled. And then another thing that also we started in our country is if we have to really go for energy security, so that we are not affected by any externalities, maybe due to war or due to any other things, then we must start doing manufacturing of these equipments in India itself. These manufacturers, they also needed certain visibility in terms of everything, in terms of the policies, in terms of the rules, regulations, the visibility in terms of the amount that whether they will be producing that will get consumed or not, the visibility in terms of other parameters. So all these needed some kind of assimilations, some kind of effort to put everything together at one place, wherein if somebody says that, okay, if I need to enter into the business of transmission, I need to go to this place and I'll find each and everything in detail so that I don't need to go individually to, let's say, CA or CTU or STU or CRC, SERCs, etc., etc. So prelim exercises can definitely be done at one place, and that's a comfort that we need to give to all these stakeholders who are really associated with the transmission segment of the country. And as I mentioned to you, because of the challenges that we are going to face in the transmission segment, we need to bring them as early as possible so that the capacities, particularly the renewable capacities, which have already tagged as must-run capacities, they are not stranded for want of transmission lines. I am sure that this particular effort of Prayas, which will keep on improving, and my team in CA here, led by member power system, Mr. Ashok Rajput, and all the chief engineers who had been involved in this particular exercise, starting from maybe Ishan Saran, or earlier VK Singh was also there, and others, whoever have been involved in this exercise. This is, as Santanu and has mentioned, that this is just a beginning. Definitely a lot of queries will start coming in. People will say, please include this, please delete this, please do some more analysis. All that kind of queries, etc., will keep on coming. We are all awaiting suggestions. I know initially there will be a flood of such kind of suggestions. We'll try to see how we are able to manage that once the floodgate is open. And we'll try to improve upon this And our endeavor definitely will be to see the ease of doing business in transmission segment so that we are able to achieve whatever challenges, whatever goals that is being set before the country through the externalities or through internal targets. I think we are all geared up, and I'm dead sure all the stakeholders. I think now by the time I am ending my speech, it is around 218 I can see on the screen. It's really wonderful to see all of you here, sparing your time in this afternoon for this noble cause. Please do give your suggestions. You are feel free to interact with CA team or Prayas team. We are there to improve upon the website, to improve upon the database. And I'm sure that this particular effort will be very, very useful to all stakeholders, including the students, academia, the RE developers, the transmission developers, everybody. I think there is hardly anyone I can see, and particularly the financial institutions who always try to see that, or the investors who really wants to see a pipeline of projects, whether it is there, it is not there, viability of such projects. Once everything is there at one window, I think what else can be thought about. And I'm sure those who are behind this curtain, maybe Mr. S.K. Soni ji, Mr. Sahgal, all these people definitely must have been contributing. I'm dead sure that their contribution will make it more useful. And I'm sorry, I'm not able to take the names of many of you here who might have contributed in this particular journey. But my sincere appreciation to every one of you who have contributed, and I'm sure you'll continue to contribute in making this portal a great success and help in development of the transmission system, and in particular achieving self-sufficiency and energy security and energy transition in the country. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for that keynote address. We will definitely take your suggestions on board. We have already started receiving a lot of suggestions in terms of more data, more documents. As you rightly said, the floodgates are open. As a team, we will try our best to be up to that task, and we'll coordinate with everyone. Thank you once again for formally launching this portal. And I'm sure, as you said, given this large number of participants, this will really be helpful for all the sector stakeholders. Thank you again, sir. Now we will move to the last part of today's program, that is the panel discussion. As you can already see on the screen, we have very important 4 eminent panelists. I will quickly introduce them, though many of them don't need any introduction. Firstly, Mr. Suni, he's the former and founder CEO of POSOCO, now renamed as Grid India. He has over 4 decades of experience covering the entire gamut of the power system operation, and he has made many contributions in the entire Indian power sector as well as cross-border power transactions. He was very critical in his role in many of these working groups, study groups like Samas, Santulan, Kabil, which are being used as a roadmap for the Indian power sector, or especially transmission and grid operation part. And he has over 100 publications in national and international journals. Secondly, Mr. Sehgal, who's the former chief operating officer of CTU, who was instrumental in planning the national grid in India. He is a graduate in electrical engineering from DCE in 1979, and he started his career with NTPC in design engineering and subsequently worked in power grid in the power system engineering division. Then we have Mr. S. Satyanarayan, who's the member secretary in WRPC presently, and he has also been associated for a very long time with the power sector, with various committees. He has worked in the fields of protection, operation studies, regulation, and the commercial aspects of power sector. And prior to joining CEA, he has worked also in the industry and also has some amount of teaching experience. And finally, to our collaborator, Ajit Pandit, who's the founding director and CEO of Idam Infrastructure Advisory. He too has a very long experience of over 26 years in policy, regulatory, project development matters related to renewables, transmissions, and the power sector. And he has also been involved in many committees. Most importantly, the FOR appointed technical committee for the development of regulations and model framework for grid integration of renewables, as well as the standing committee on transmission formed by MERC to review and formulate transmission system planning in Maharashtra. So we couldn't have, a more diverse, eminent, and a senior panel with us today. Once again, really thankful to all four of you for joining us at such short notice. The way we will do it, we have around 45 minutes with us. So first, I will request all of you to make some opening comments, say 3 to 5 minutes. You can limit your comments if possible. Taking a broad view of the importance of transmission in the electricity journey of India. What are the challenges? What are the good things we have done? What we can learn or what we can improve upon? I leave it to you to make those opening comments. And then I have a few specific questions, and then we will take some questions from the audience. So may I request Mr. Suni to begin, and then Mr. Sehgal, then Mr. Satyanarayan, and finally Ajit. Over to you, Mr. Suni.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ashwin. I hope I am audible and
yes, sir.
Yeah. So let me start with saying that, wow, what a pleasure to see such a portal. It's a dream we had decades back. Before I come to the portal, let me say, as India, we are proud of our transmission grid. It is not only one of the best, it is the best, and people will realize in next 1 decade that what are the strength of India. We have India grid as common carrier. Transmission is infrastructure of infrastructure of infrastructure, infrastructure to the power 3. And if you have got transmission right, then integrating renewables, ensuring reliability, resilience, many things, all this puzzle will fit in. This is the centerpiece of the jigsaw puzzle. I have tried at many places trying to explain Indian power system. And I myself get lost actually. From where to start, where to end. Do we get into policy, then planning process, the regulatory process, the access methods, the pricing methods, institutional arrangements? Believe me, it's not very easy for anyone outside India, even inside India. I often say that transmission is understood, if not misunderstood. And it's really complex. Now, the voracious appetite of everyone, first to understand the concepts and then to look at the numbers. It is ever increasing, and there is no looking back. Those of us who are in transmission for last many decades would also like to know about the numbers. And this portal will satisfy all these requirements. But let me also say that you cannot satisfy the appetite. Whatever you give, dil mange more. And the more you give, the more people will ask, more value-added service, more things will be. But that is good for the system. Now, this portal also, as in India, we can take pride that everybody can see what has happened in India. Otherwise, this itself was not properly available to most of the people. I see this portal, motivating youngsters of tomorrow's power system planners. This is as far as the transmission is concerned, but basically this is nothing but wire business. Tomorrow we will need similar things for every distribution utility when the renewables will come in. And this experience would be very handy. As I said, visualization and data and analyzing it, there is no end to it, but it's a fantastic start. And it was long overdue, I must say. And we should keep getting suggestions. I have lots of suggestions to give, that there should be a button for giving suggestions on this website itself, so that people can give suggestions. And then, you know, all the good papers, good presentations which people have been making, even there could be a corner for that also. And there could be help centers, there could be stories which many living memories have it, and probably that has not been documented. We can have a history section also about the Indian history. And if you listen to the stories and history about how the transmission system has been reoriented in different states of the country, like say Kerala, or where there is a right of way an issue, it's such a pleasure to hear. So all in all, I will not take much time in the initial one, because it's a topic close to my heart, and I'm extremely happy to be there, to be here as a panelist, and would try to answer as the moderator will desire. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Suni sir. I would now request Mr. Sehgal to make his opening comments. Sir, you're on mute. Mr. Sehgal, you're on mute.
Sorry. Hello, am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Good evening, all my panel fellows and all my participants. First, I would like to congratulate the Prayas for such a beautiful effort in which they made such a good portal, actually, in which in one place you can have information for all type, be it technical, be a regulatory, be, you know, the real operation data. It is a wonderful job which has been done, and it will really give benefit to all the not only the power system engineers, the finance peoples, or, you know, the people of other area, all those type of stakeholders, they can get the information at one place. As Soni Saab has told that, you know, really the many of us were very fortunate that we traveled the whole journey of development of, you know, the transmission sector in the country, actually. And if we recall really our time beginning when we started a career, and now when we see the size of the grid, actually, really we always feel, you know, frankly speaking, I feel pride on you, or not on myself, but to the whole power system group, actually, because the biggest, you know, let me tell you, in our whole journey of development of transmission and national grid, the biggest asset what we were having was that all the stakeholders who were involved in the planning and all the stakeholders involved in the implementation, you know, they all appreciated each other's ideas, though there were, you know, difference in opinions many times on, you know, the configuration and technology options and all, but finally we converged into, you know, some solution to it. That's why if you see that Indian grid, particularly I today find, not only from the size point of view, but if you see the state of our technology, basically, let me tell you, Indian grid has all technology. Maybe long back we say thyristor control, series compensation, series capacitors. You know, though today it looks to be a very common phenomenon, but see that first time when, you know, the Tala transmission system came, and the Raipur Aurkela was to synchronize between east and west, basically. Then when we proposed the series capacitor and thyristor control series compensation, it was certainly a very new technology for all of us. And all in-house we studied, we carry out studies, we find out the parameter, and, you know, we did a field test on that, actually. So why I'm explaining all that is, if we remember about that journey, and that was a one big, you know, difference in the national grid when we synchronized eastern region with the western region, actually. And you know, not only you talk about plus minus 800 kV, 6,000 megawatt HVDC from Anya to Agra, then Champa, Kushetra, Raigad, Paglur, I still remember when we thought about plus minus 800 kV, 6,000 megawatt HVDC, world's largest voltage and largest capacity and such a longest, it was looking to a dream. Whether really we will implement it, whether really we will get a the approval of all the stakeholders to go for such a technology actually. But you know, in the process of consultation, in the process of technology consultation, planning stakeholder consultation, we have come out with this. And then I remember when we planned the statcom actually, after the disturbance in 2012, suddenly the grid required the statcom was to put. I still remember there was a lot of controversy whether to go for SVC or statcom actually. Again, lot of deliberation took place. I still remember Sony Sab was also totally involved in that. Lot of advice from the grid operator we get it. And we came out with the, lot of STATCOM are being installed over there. So what I mean to say is that the transmission sector has developed and we have always come, whatever challenge has come in front of us, we have given them the solution with the technology or with the appropriate planning basically. Let me tell you, the biggest change came in Indian power system was Electricity Act 2003, basically. Because when Electricity Act 2003 came, when the market was the spirit of the act, basically, and subsequently the regulation 2004 came actually, where there was certain provision in the regulation, and I remember I got more than 100 applications for the long-term access at that time, and none of them were knowing where the power to go, who will be the beneficiary basically. It was a very simple solution for a planner to return back their application in 5 minutes basically, to simply tell them you are not going as per the regulation basically, because regulation says you have to tell the source, you have to tell the location. Since you do not know beneficiary, my problem would have been solved in 5 minutes basically. But we in a CTU at that time decided, no, this is not a solution. If we return this 100 application now, basically, simply by saying that you don't require a beneficiary, when the transmission system will come, basically. Because after all, if this generation are come, they have to go to some location in the country, basically. And that was the biggest challenge we had it, basically. And I remember in CTU, we sit together, we spent about 5-6 months in evolving what can be the likely load generation scenarios, what can be the likely scenario in the country in which a skeleton transmission network will fit and handle all the scenarios basically. I still remember then that's why the 9 high capacity corridor came up basically. None of them having a beneficiaries, and at that time, just because of 2004 to 2008, again the new regulation was formulated in 2009 that we can go with the target beneficiaries. It means the regulation was also changed, looking into the requirement. System planning was also done to meet those challenges which are in front of all the stakeholders basically. So in that way, again, then there was no regulation for giving regulatory approval. Again, the regulation was formed to give a regulatory approval because there was a provision in the tariff policy that even if the stakeholders do not agree, the CTU and CA, if they feel that it is required, they can go ahead after getting regulatory approval. Then the regulation was formulated basically for giving a regulatory approval. And I will still tell you at that time, biggest challenge was investment approval, because our board was saying how to make an investment, because how you are sure that you are coming out with certain generator transmission system, whether those generator will come or not basically. I still remember the various teams from CTU went to different areas like in Odisha, Chhattisgarh, try to make a milestones to give a confidence to the board actually. Yes, these projects will come up basically. So what I mean to say that a very good, challenging task was done from 2004 to, when we say this national grid today, basically. Though I've spoken, I think, beyond my time limit.
No, sir.
I feel very happy when we see this national grid today and the journey we traveled basically, in which, Mr. Soni was all time our mentor because he always give us advice, directions, and how to proceed further. With this, though I have many things to speak about it.
No,
But
sir,
with this,
we will come back to you with some specific questions as well. Thank you. Thank you for your opening comments. Now to Mr. Satyanarayan for his opening comments.
Namaskar, am I audible? Yeah, okay. First of all, Prayas, A hearty congratulations to you for developing the portal. In fact, you have stolen my dream project. Okay, I'll put it that way. Yeah? See, collecting data, putting it in a database format so as to get it into a 360-degree query is a tough job. And I am a programmer myself. Of course, I'm an engineer, I'm an electrical engineer, I look after the grid. That's a different aspect. But I'm a programmer myself. So I can understand the amount of efforts that you all have done. And believe me that when a knowledgeable person who has failed in many of these projects, if he gives you the compliment, you should evaluate a little highly and not looking at my failures. Every boss or every researcher wants ready-made data which cuts him on his research time. And you all have done something very beautiful. You can improve it. And your portal was so exciting that I did not feel like logging into this seminar, and it was so nice. I mean, so congratulations for that. And please continue the good work. And in fact, we will also be using some of the data from yours even for our official meeting, because kuch nahi mila to yahan se to milega. So that is my heartiest praise to Prayas for the good work done. Now we are talking about transmission planning our eminent panelists, Sehgal sir and Suni sir, have already explained the basics of what is what is there. See, but for the general attendees, what I want to say is, in the early decades of 90s when we joined, it was essentially a source is known and a destination is known, and the transmission planning came around. That is the concept in the 90s or 80s, 70s, whatever. Now, the trouble with the transmission system in those days was, due to various reasons, if a transmission, one of the three is going to come first. Either the generator will come first, or the line will come first, or the load would come to its predicted value. These three were the only three things that are possible. If the generation comes earlier and the transmission line is still under the progress, it used to result in low voltages and causing some amount of blackouts, like voltage collapse related blackouts. That is the first thing. If the line comes earlier, but the generation doesn't come earlier, it used to be a frequency problem. Okay, the frequency would go down, the voltages were reasonably better. And the same thing, if the load comes earlier, then in that case, the frequency would. Without this slowly, we came to an era, as our good friend Sehgal was pointing out, that we slowly started increasing our transmission system. As early in 2007, up to 2007, from 95 to 2007, which is a good 12, 13 years, the Western Region Secretariat used to sincerely carry out a load flow studies on the HT shunt capacitor requirements in the Western region. And as early as 2007-8, looking at the foreseeable future at that point of time, I had made a remark that nowadays the problem of low voltage is not severe. It is going to be an issue of the high voltage. Okay. Now, that is as early as 2007-8. Okay. 2010-11 was the last system studies we did for a generic low voltage. You see, generic low voltage means you will get certain seasons like Rabi season in MP, agricultural loads go high, voltages go. And WR used to have what is called as an MW peak and an MVR peak. Okay. MW peaks would occur in the month of March typically, when the Western region would face the highest demand, and MVR peaks would occur when we have sufficient active power, when we do not have the voltage to drive it. Now, that used to happen in the months of October, November, and the earliest PSS tuning studies which we did were for both these peaks. Old memories, photo albums, okay? I'm going to all the photo albums. Now, what is happening is today we are having fairly high peaks. And grid operation is always an issue, because in low voltage scenario, the generators will generate not more than 395 kilovolts at the generating terminal high voltage bus. And today in the high voltage scenario, they will not generate anything lower than 410 kV at the high voltage. This is a perennial problem. The generators do not want their machines to absorb the power. But physics says that it is a generator which has to maintain the voltage. If the generator maintains the reference point of voltage, then only the loads can come down. Today the scenario is, if you see a load flow, the VAR actually flows from low kV into the generator rather than the reverse. So we need to move. Corrections we do, we are at operating point, we move this way in the 90s towards low voltage. Now we are moving towards the high voltage. But that is a problem of the excess. Now coming to the transmission line problem, earlier in the 90s, prior to the act, it was the source is known, destination is known, that kind of plan. Now things are very unknown. Now source may be known, therefore we have to put the lines. Now when you are having this problem from a physics angle, okay, the thing is, how are you going to decide where the destination is? It's not an easy problem. See, it's very easy to do a load flow and say this is the line from here to here, here to here, here to here. But the problem is we need to know exactly how the loads are coming. And planners, generally, they go wrong. It's not that they deliberately want to go wrong, but there are uncertainties. So when we talk as a sector, we have an uncertainty in planning, and the uncertainty in planning is there. Nobody knows tomorrow. So now we need to put our limited resources of money in such a way so as to maximize the benefits. So this gives challenges. The RE challenge is a technological challenge because the thermal generators are now moving out of the system, or at best they are giving a supporting role. Who was the hero of a film like Amitabh Bachchan is now playing a side role in a movie. Aisa ho raha hai, but an important role. It's not that it's not an unimportant role. He has an important role to play. He still carries on the weight, because if he is not there, it's very difficult. So these are the newer challenges. Now, our friend was mentioning when you join the WR and the ER, you needed to plan for series capacities. If you put series capacitors, you also have a danger of going to SSR. Particularly if you go on following your old methodology of reducing the line and making it LL, or at some particular point, you may put the entire capacitor right into a generator's mouth, and that line will not be the originally planned. Which means that you need to relocate the source or put it at a more appropriate location. So these are challenges even to our own community. We have to keep ourselves updated. We are like those old MBBS doctors. If we remain as per the old ones, we are outdated. So we have to read the research papers and go on through all the stuff. It's not an easy job. We have to also keep ourselves updating. From the point of view of the sector, we need a win-win solution, because it's not just putting an asset and we need to utilize it. If it is not getting reflected as an ATC, TTC availability, what is the use of it? I believe that if you put a line, and if that 400 kV line can carry 500 megawatt, I believe in nichodne ka every pie without taking a risk on the system step, without taking that risk. But that does not also mean that I should become so safe that I go below SIL or things like that. So if you go below SIL also, there's a problem. If you go above SIL also, there is a problem. So protection, power system operation, transmission planning is always a double-edged sword. You can't take an extreme position, because you are going to be hit by any one of the sides. And that's where the debate is. Ultimately, we still believe that we need a win-win. A win-win means that DISCOM should recover the cost of that asset. Once the cost of the asset is recovered, then if the DISCOM is healthy, all the rest are healthy. So commercially also we should be healthy. Technically also we should be healthy. And all this requires continuous moderation, because this is a democratic process where we are looking at Bahujan Hitay, Bahujan Sukhai. Right? So engineering apart, at the end of the day, we have to remember simple things like Bahujan Hitay, Bahujan Sukhai. Don't be overcautious when you're operating the grid for a fear of a blackout. I'll just do one example as a closing remark. Now, there was a certain part of the constituent of our southern region, Goa. Now, he has one line of 400 kV. I trust 400 kV. I don't trust 220 kVs, and they are supporting it, because 220 kV systems are going to be supportive only if the 400 kV injections are at that point. A 400 kV line has 10 times the impedance less as compared to a 220 kV. So it's more near. A 160 kilometer 400 kV station and a 160 kilometer 220 kV path. The 160 kilometer 400 kV station is 160 kilometer. Then the 220 kV path is 1600 kilometer because it's impedance. It's a far neighbor. Okay. So we need to understand all that, and using all this, load bhi manage karna hai, outage bhi dena hai, these kind of issues keep coming into the sector. And that is where one has to make a compromise on everything. I think these are good enough for the opening remarks. And
Thank you, sir.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'll come back with questions. Thanks a lot for that perspective. And finally to Ajit for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Ashwin. Am I audible? Perfect. Great. Thanks indeed, Ashwin, Shantanu, and entire Prayas team, not only for this opportunity, but also for giving us an opportunity to be a technology partner on this, technical partner in the entire exercise. And it's really a happy feeling that something that we started off almost a year and a half ago, right at the drawing board in terms of conceptualization and designing of this portal, with the modules and sub-modules, it has come to such a wonderful output and outcome. So just a couple of points I'd like to actually make is, today we are talking about transmission, both interstate and intrastate together as a system. Mr. Soni as well as Mr. Sehgal and Satyanan mentioned, we are something that to be proud about as in India. I'm just putting numbers here, about 11.8 lakhs MV of transformation capacity, substation capacity, and close to 5 lakh circuit kilometers. It's not a mean achievement, but that also translates to something like an ARR of, if you add together for interstate and intrastate, to carry over our 1400 plus billion units of energy, we're talking about 1 lakh crores of an ARR, close to 1 lakh crore of an ARR, considering all state intrastate transmission system as well as interstate transmission system put together. So that's a sizable chunk, and then the cost of that is actually it is increasing over a period. It's very happy feeling to know that with that we are actually introduced GNA without bothering about the load flow or the draw point locations, and we can facilitate really any kind of ease of market access for any type of transactions could be easily accommodated now. But going forward, as I see it, we'll see a demand on transmission to optimize. We have been discussing optimization on power purchase and generation, but there would now be a demand for both optimization and flexibilization in terms of transmission grid or network in that sense. And there are a couple of areas in which one would look at optimization priorities. And I like to put in 3 P's for this prioritization activities or action points that one could look at. And we did discuss jointly in terms of another exercise that we had worked together with the support of Mr. Soni and Sehgal and Mr. Talwar and many other expert group members. So those 3 P's are something which is, we are talking about the planning conundrum, the planning, the pricing, as well as the participation. So these 3 P's we have to look at carefully in terms of where all we can actually do the optimization in terms of planning, the kind of challenges that has been talked about. But I would say, in fact, that also presents an opportunity in terms of developing, going away beyond just a deterministic based planning approach to more probabilistic based planning approach, with various techniques to be deployed in terms of, because the power flows are actually changing with more and more variable renewable into the grid across the season and across throughout the year. Also the directions of power flow is also changing. So whether our planning is capable to cater to all these requirements at the same time in an optimal manner, that is something that is one we'll have to look at more carefully going forward. The second P is on the pricing that we talked about, and we had achieved the POC-based approach at the regional level, but that is something that, the distance, directions, and sensitivity-based approach, although partially attenuated now, but, one should try and, look at how to bring in the tariff policy. Did talked about trying to bring in the states also on the similar regime, but it has not yet been attempted. So there is a possibility of looking at one nation transmission grid, and similarly one transmission grid OTG price kind of an approach, pricing approach. And there are a lot more work can be done in this, but it'll actually benefit all the users, whether it's a generator or a beneficiaries or discounts or a buyers in a big way. And then the third P is in terms of where we can look at in terms of optimization or efficiency improvement is in terms of the participation models for investment in transmission. We have fairly had an experience about competitive bidding through build own operate or build own operate transfer models. But we can try and work out on a couple of other independent IPT models, including deferred EPC, EPC plus financing, or DBFO approaches even in transmission. And there are ways to develop this and apply it in different situations of transmission grid, whether on the substation or the lines or on the HVDC frameworks. One could try and work around on those things. So these are the three areas wherein something maybe this platform or portal could actually generate some kind of a debate platform, or blogs could be worked around on this. And one could actually bring in all the expert inputs as well as other different stakeholder perspectives to a kind of a discussions on, and ideas could also be generated through this portal. So I'm very happy to be part of this very path-breaking initiative in that sense, and thanks for this opportunity once again. Maybe I'll stop here considering time, Claude, and probably open to the questions in the subsequent round.
Thank you, Ajit, and all the panelists. We have around 20-25 minutes for questions. I would just request everyone to keep their answers short so that we can take more and more questions. And I've also taken some of the questions from the audience and sort of collated them with the questions that I had initially listed, so as to broaden the question and take in more questions. So one of the first things that we were seeing is a lot of things are happening in transmission. The GNA regulations were referred to, the IEGC draft has come up, MOP has put out new rules on transmission planning. Even the CEA manual on transmission planning criteria has been revised. The transmission plan for 500 gigawatt report is out. So a lot is happening, but is that enough? What specifically more needs to be done? What are the challenges? And one of the challenges that we keep facing, or we heard in terms of the transmission expert group as well, is that transmission planning crosses multiple jurisdictions, multiple agencies are involved. There's states, there's regions, there's national grid, and there's a lot of issues in terms of coordinations, data sharing for optimal transmission planning and investments. So looking at that challenge and what is already happening in transmission, where do you see improvements possible or challenges, or what needs to be done next? Maybe Mr. Suni can start, and then either Mr. Saigal or Mr. Satyanarayan can briefly answer that.
Yeah, thank you. See, it reminds me of that couplet. हजारों ख्वाहिश इतनी कि हर ख्वाहिश पे दम निकले, फिर बहुत निकले फिर भी कम निकले. This is the issue. So the more we do, the more is the thing. So I have a big list of it. First of all, we should be grateful to our predecessor. Many great power systems, we stand tall on the shoulders of our predecessors. It's a time to also, pay respect to them that we have reached to this stage. But I also agree fully with you that this is not the end. So first thing which comes to my mind is the reactive power. The reactive power equipment and wire, they have to be separated. The way we separated generation from transmission, the reactive instruments, reactive entire thing has to be separated from transmission. There is no reason why it cannot be. We understand that the transmission also generates reactive power, but reactors, SVCs, STATCOMs, IBRs, reactive power, that's going to be a big topic, particularly with renewables, and all the experts know about it. So this was the first thing, and that brings us to the dynamic reactive power pricing. See, pre-2012, we were not having any SVCs because we thought that, but then we realized the importance of dynamic reactive power. So one of the theory is that future we should have dynamic pricing in the reactive power. So this is one. The other thing is that certainly, can we keep on building transmission? How much corridor we want to further utilize? Do we really mean copper plate? How thick would be the copper plate? So these are the questions. So one of the simple approach could be, having done all these things, institutional re-engineering, we have now CTU, which is having no conflict of interest, and would look at all the transmission service provider in a very uniform way. Look at the transmission not as a line. Look at the transmission as towers which are connected by wires. And can we reorient the transmission lines and change the topology? India has done at many places. I remember when two lines going nearby or crossing each other, there have been special agreements between the different owners, and that line was converted by using one D-type tower, and it has saved a river crossing. So I will say that every time a new line is proposed, there should be a parallel study that how can we reduce by using multi-licensee reoriented transmission. At present, it's almost a no-no because jurisdiction issues are there, regulatory commissions, ownership, sharing. There are 100 and odd issues, and nobody touches this difficult area. But in time to come, that should become another important one. Now, a few more things which we have to be mindful. What has brought us together to this stage, those strengths have to be kept in mind. What was that? Carriage content separation was simpler now when I look back. What is more important is that no contract of purchase should be path specific in future. We still have a couple of lines where there is a path specific. For example, Balimela Upper Seluru, Kolhapur Chikkudi, and the line with Bangladesh. So we have to have that open access very strictly reinforced even at the intrastate level, and then only we will be able to have all such things. We have moved from Kirchhoff's current law to Kirchhoff's voltage law, which was very natural because we are handling fungible commodity, and in our power flow, nobody knows, there is a current formulation also possible, but basically we have all followed voltage formulation and GNA, and this POC, all are moving towards voltage law. And this is the right way to do. This is what even Stagg and Elabiad and other people have said about it. But it was because of some other reason that it has not come. I saw one question in the question answer, and let me take this opportunity. Mr. Raja Rao said that, is there such a portal available elsewhere in the world? Very important question. And in fact, I was searching but didn't find. But my counter question to Mr. Raja Rao would be that, do we have such a grid, which is a common carrier you can sell from Kanyakumari to Kashmir within 15 minutes through your terminal without knowing whose line you are using, and everything is settled by somebody else? So we have a very strong transmission, but point very well taken. We should keep looking at it and learn from the problems which other countries have faced. FARC also has recently said that this is not the way to do transmission plan. So we need to move on our strengths. And I fully agree that the optimization, not that the transmission can have it can go on and on. Unbridled power cannot be there. You cannot have. There is a point of saturation, and we should be doing optimization in terms of reorientation. Other points which have also come up: percentage utilization of transmission. This is an FAQ. I have been asking hundreds of power system people. I don't know the answer, but certainly it is not something like generation. All good things in life have single-digit utilization factor, including our brain. So transmission, if you are thinking of a very high number of utilization, we are going wrong somewhere. So that the policymakers have to gather courage and say that, no, this is how we will have our transmission. This gives us resilience. This gives us security. This, we are utilizing our diversity. And hence, we are not looking forward to a very high utilization of transmission and cause congestion and associated issues. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Sehgal, if you can come in next, and I'll just add one more question in terms of, you've been involved in power grid and also in the private sector now. How do you look at the competitive bidding guidelines and the framework, especially the recent Supreme Court order in terms of, that what is the threshold limits that state should set, and for interstate system also there should be competitive bidding, and your experience at the national level for ISTS projects also, that and planning, how do you look at that going ahead?
Yeah, Ashwin, can I just interrupt you?
Yeah, only if it's a very short thing. Otherwise, I'll come back to you after this.
No. What was the question which we just Sunil Saab answered?
No, that was about coordination and planning in terms of multiple jurisdictions. And
I was going through the question and answer list, and I didn't find the question.
No, there was one question by another gentleman that Mr. Suni referred to. Yeah, I'll come back to you after Mr. Sehgal.
Yeah, sure.
Sir, you're on mute. Mr. Sehgal, you're on mute.
See, first thing I would like to tell you that, when we talk about the planning part, though, there are few statements which you talk about, that is the utilization of transmission corridor, the coordination and planning, and third is no C2E formed and there is no conflict of interest. I will just like to join these three statements basically. First thing, let me tell you, though it's very good that C2E being formed separately, but as I tell you, the planning was never with any interest basically, because planning was done based on what the generation and load scenarios are going to come. Let me tell you, many times when everything is being done and things are put in place basically, we start focusing on those things which are not being utilized rather than on those things which are being utilized basically. The process of planning is what basically? It is always a input data. I'll tell you, in 2005-6 to 2008, if you see the generation scenario, it was all generation was coming in eastern part of India actually. Talk about Odisha complex or talk about, Bihar and UP border, all big generating plants were coming actually. And everybody was saying the power plants are coming in next 2-3 years basically. And the system were to plant with, combined east-north high capacity corridors basically, apart from northwest. But what happened within 2 years or 3 years basically, no generation came in eastern region basically, or very little generation came in eastern region. Everything came in Chhattisgarh basically, and WRNR become congestion. And people say this is not a good planning basically. The point is that it is not that certainly, when that new situation came, certainly there will be a time taken for planning, certain time taken for implementation basically. Now, certainly, once we plan WRNR more to avoid the congestion of WRNR, certainly ERNR, because generation is not there basically, that will not be utilized actually. But the question is, the same thing happened. Now, all of a sudden from thermal, now we are entering into RE actually, because RE is on the right hand side of the country basically, right, south, west and all actually. Then immediately issue came, or a Rajasthan actually. But one thing we have to appreciate, that once the first green energy corridor came, first one, when it was planned, how much was the investment made on that first corridor, and for how much power to be evacuated on that actually. It was only incremental transmission system in green energy corridor. Just see what it was. It was a Tuticorin, very small elements of Tuticorin. And at Bhuj was only because Bhuj was earlier no generation and no transmission. The only Bhuj element came broadly over there. So what I'm trying to make it basically, that transmission planning has always done with a proper coordination, looking into what is the generation and load scenarios. But certainly in any developed countries, there is an uncertainty basically. It all depends upon how much uncertainty can be reduced. If you reduce the uncertainty, certainly you will become more optimized. But it looks to me by passage of journey that it is not in the hand of anybody basically. It's nothing there to blame somebody basically. It's
Right.
nothing in the hand of anybody. If uncertainty is there, let's see even out of the uncertainty something which has come up, what it has resulted into that basically. That is what positive approach we have to look into. You see about the from 2003 to till now, the quantum of short-term access, the quantum of power exchange, the quantum of medium-term open access has come, which without creating any transmission system basically, because we were not supposed to make it basically. It has come all because we built up from the margins, we built up from the infrastructure actually. So therefore, what my point is that there was no conflict of interest while planning. It was only because uncertainties were there, which were inevitable basically. That's why the some utilization of some corridor and next utilization of another corridor comes basically. And this, I feel, this process will go on actually.
So could you also just reflect very briefly on the competitive bidding nature or TBCB part,
Yeah.
because we are at 4:25. I want to get in two more questions to Ajit and
Right.
Mr.
Again,
Satyanarayan.
on the competitive bidding process side, I remember on 5th January 2011 onwards, when it was become mandatory for tariff-based competitive bidding, people were expecting. See, let me tell you, when I'm not saying that I'm going to, support power grid by giving this statement, the people were feeling that, the power grid will nowhere get any project from the TBCB basically. But if you have a data, I think IDM have the data. If you just find out in terms of kilometer or in terms of number of projects or in terms of the cost basically, you'll find Power Grid is again a major stakeholder basically. So it was not that because once the competition comes over there, certainly the people with the experiences and people knows how to optimize the design basically, they come out with that basically.
Right.
So competitive bidding has not affected any developer, and certainly it's a good approach in arriving a tariff over there.
Right. Thank you.
May I suggest that we extend the session by 10 minutes to allow panelists to answer. And at the same time, I would request them to please be brief so that people can sort of stay for 10 minutes more and then we can discuss. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I just have a couple of points to make.
Yes, sir, please.
As I have already praised your web portal, I would expect, this is one of the questions which I was going through. I would request Prayas that if regulations are modified or changed or a new one comes, that you may look into modifying it immediately.
Yes, sir.
But when it comes to the data, prefer a monthly approach of updating. If not, I mean, if you cannot meet monthly, at least on a quarterly basis, because
certainly, sir.
That is one.
Yeah.
Second thing is, I would really like to appreciate the point raised by both our eminent panelists, Segal sir and Mr. See, there is an uncertainty in planning. Let's accept that. All our planning is based on the load demand and how it is likely to grow. But the fact is, let's compare the two prime cities of India, Delhi and Mumbai. In the 90s, they were of the similar order, but today Delhi has outgrown. Delhi has outgrown into a very big grid, much more than Mumbai. Okay, so an uncertainty in planning is understood, acceptable, and planning doesn't really have a problem because all our lines are AC lines, most of them. They're not even talking of HVDCs. So it's okay. We thought that WR would be the maximum importer, but let's say that it turns out that over the period of 5 years, WR is the maximum exporter. That doesn't change the equations. Okay, so we have seen it happening that a decision could be wrong at an individual level or whatever. Still, the overall planning system is fairly robust enough to handle these.
Right. So just to add to you, and probably Mr. Suni could also briefly answer, we fully appreciate the uncertainty, but as we can see with new end use of electrification, let's say new industrial processes are getting electrified, or you have large green hydrogen projects, or even energy storage, which is very likely to change the loading pattern or the utilization patterns going ahead. So, this uncertainty, as Mr. Suni is saying, is only going to increase in the future. So, that is something we all need to consider. Another question, maybe Ajit can take this in terms of the regulatory and the pricing mechanism that he referred to, which has certainly evolved over the years. And one of the objectives laid out in the tariff policy is that pricing should be sensitive to flow, direction, and distance. So how far are we in terms of achieving that objective, especially at the state level, because that still seems to be the postage stamp method in terms of pricing? And how do you look at all these incentives and waivers for RE in terms of pricing? Maybe you could just talk about a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks, Ashwin. So I think the distance direction and quantum power flow based pricing approach, introduced at the ISTS level, and it's more than now decade old experience of operationalization. Over a period, we have changed even the dimension of that, and now the more recently with this 4-component approach, it actually in a way attenuated at least the usage based approach. But so there is a, in terms of national component, regional component, and the other maybe some kind of distance sensitivities or probably got built in through load flow analysis and the POC pricing. But the usage based part, it's really attenuated. At the state level, certainly we are continuing still with the postage approach in many places, and that the reason for that is actually the kind of rigorous data incentives network modeling that is required to be brought in. Okay, there were a couple of attempts in couple of states. For example, Maharashtra has actually undertaken certain study, but the way the network is growing, probably now we have to. That's where I mentioned about we have to look at as a one single transmission grade, right from ISTS and intrastate together as a one transmission grade, and try and look at the entire probably ARR for this together. In any case, with GNA operationalized, and now more and more the generators as well as consumers wanting to seek access to any connectivity to the either ISTS or any kind of transactions. I think the integrated POC approach would benefit, but there is a long way to work towards. We have to build in internally a lot more background homework is required for operationalization, or even this concept first to think through about what it would entail. But prima facie it appears that it will have a lot more benefit if you to really look at the integrated POC approach for the entire transmission grid as such.
Okay.
And
thanks a
coming
lot,
to
Ajit.
the last point, probably I'll just, since you mentioned
Please,
about the renewable pricing and I think there somewhere there is always a waiver there is already now a trajectory which is given, so there is a socialization which is fine. But the challenge from the in terms of planning point of view is today now we are looking at even say 50 megawatt project to be connected to the ISTS, and then start demanding the requests coming in for ISTS connectivity. So whether it is planning or a suboptimal planning is something that one have to really look at. And that was the last point. You can conclude, Ashwin, back to you.
Sorry, my mic was on. No, before concluding, I just wanted to give the panelists, if they have any very last, just under a minute comments, because we have gone past 4:30. I still see 150 participants. It's very encouraging to see that, but it's been 1.5 hours. So just 1 minute in last comments, if anyone has. Mr. Saigal and Mr. Suni have their hands up, I think.
I would very quickly come up with this. Yes. We need to learn from GST. We need to learn from finance. We are handling fungible commodity. Notwithstanding technical challenges, it's our responsibility to build transmission. And we will need more and more transmission, that is for sure. Other thing I would say, CTU-STU coordination, which has come up, Panditji has raised it very vividly. There is enormous work to be done on that area. It's more of a governance issue. It's more of an institutional engineering issue rather than technical issue. Last 2 points, we should start calculating LMPs. We have security constraint economic dispatch. Ministry says that they had security constraint economic dispatch, and SCED automatically gives LMPs if there is a congestion. And that should be up to a granular level, up to 132 kV. That will give a beautiful feedback to the planners as far as the transmission is concerned. And that's where the economics of generation and transmission collide. Last point, when should we have FTR? Should we have FTR? Should we not have FTR? What are the pros? What are the cons? If you're talking of optimization, if you're talking about hedging, then at least we should start discussing about FTRs and not shy away from that. LMPs and FTRs, both are important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Soni. Mr. Saigal, and then Mr.
Yeah, I have a very small submission. The point is, now I heard many developers basically regarding the reactive compensation by particularly RE generators, actually, because everybody is installing capacitors and when somebody say I'm installing this capacitor bank and all, sometimes I'm surprised basically how come a same capacitor bank can be installed at different locations. Because I personally feel that there are different locations of the RE development, like for example near Bhuj or maybe in the Rajasthan or maybe different location, and everywhere because of the the sensitivity of the Q versus voltage is a different actually. So I personally feel that central planning agencies should take a lead to guide these RE developers area wise basically what should be the required the compensation they want from the RE developer, rather than having a similar type of thing that you put in capacitor or the whatever combination capacitor reactor, and what should be the type of switching basically to handle looking into the particular area, because it depends on the area the different type of combination of capacitor reactor would be required. So perhaps I feel that this is a lag. Basically, RE developer is not a competent enough to really find out these results, basically these solutions. So this lead has to be taken by central planner. Maybe it is being implemented by the developer, but if they know upfront that they have to install this one, they will find out as a part of price also.
Right, sir. Thanks. Mr. Satyanarayan?
Yeah, I mean, my point is simple. You're all dealing on assumptions, okay? And the fact is, usage means that you are really using it is the primary, you would say, motivation force beyond the POC regulations. But there's another fundamental theorem which says that power flows by displacement. So somebody is drawing a certain power is only on the basis of, yes, he's using the line, but power is flowing by displacement. Okay? So while we have to deal with complicated issues, I guess that we need to move towards simplicity. Simple schemes like postage stamp method is not that bad, of course. According to our theory of economics, transmission system should have increased at a point where the cost of the POC is very high, but we observe that this has not happened. So, I mean, this opens up. So, reforms will need further reforms. It's a philosophical question more than a yes/no answer, and we'll have groups on both sides. But that's it. I mean, we need to keep exploring and be simple because the future is complicated. So that's my advice.
Thank you, Mr. Satyanarayan. Ajit, any last points?
No, but I'm good. Just one last point about in terms of this governance issue that Mr. Suni mentioned. I think in the STU processes, we have to have some kind of a more peer review of the STU plans that that gets debated. I mean, that's not been enough debated in at the state level in many states as such. So that would also bring in some kind of transparency in terms of dealing and whether really the plans are optimal plans, rather than taking just pure recommendations as such.
Right.
Just one point, just why don't you quickly check whether we have answered all our participants, whatever they want.
No, I'm sure we haven't answered all of participants because there were more than 40-50 questions, but we will bilaterally take them up because we get a list of questions after the webinar ends and we will email, we know which person has sent it. We'll definitely write to each one of them. And just adding on last Ajit's point, one of our colleagues who's also working on, this project called ETPI, Electricity Transition Preparedness Initiative of States. They were also looking at, STU plans and whether they are approved by the regulators. Investment plans are, but perspective plans may not be in certain states. And as Ajit was saying, there is a lot more need to critically examine and debate those plans as well. So with that, I really want to thank all our panelists for a very healthy discussion, putting forth their views. And as we all said, this is just the beginning. Thank you again for all your appreciation and kind words. That gives us a lot of encouragement to keep updating it, adding new modules. And we really hope, after 1.5 hours also, we have 150 people. Those people will be using this portal, sending us critical feedback, and we are really ready to take this to the next level. I will now request my colleague Soumendra to just extend a vote of thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Ashwin. So to begin with, I will like to thank our audience who were present still, and it shows that they are really interested in power transmission sector in India. Then I would like to thank our panelists who have given an enlightening discussion and given us a thought process that, okay, all this needs to be done and all. And also to Chairman CA, Mr. Sri Ghanshyam Prasad ji, for inaugurating this website. Now, in addition to this, I will also like to thank team from CA, especially from Power System Wing and Idam, including Anant and Nikita, for helping us in developing this website. Then we would like to also thank our developers, namely Carving IT, including Ketan and Shraddha, and also Amok, who helped us in designing this website in a present form, and also our PG colleagues who have supported us in various forms, and without them it was not possible to have this website live and working. Finally, as we end, I would like to tell you that we are going to work on regularly updating this website, apart from improving this website by adding more and more states, more data and policy documents, so that this keeps on going. And also we call upon all the audience and other stakeholders to contribute in this website. Before we close, I would just like to inform you that we will be sharing the recording in few days.
One second, Soumya.
Yes.
Ganesham sir, do you want to make any comment or any sort of last word on this deliberation before we close? Yes, sir. Please go ahead. Any advice, any comments on the deliberation, on the questions that you have seen, apart from, the range of sort of expectation that people have about what kind of data should be there? We'll definitely be working on that. But if, over to you for any comments or any advice.
Thank you, Shantanu, for once again giving me this. Even though I was listening to the experts giving their thoughts and questions. This was as per my expectation as well. That there will be huge amount of.
Sir, your voice is coming in and out. You need to be slightly closer. Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Am I audible now? Okay, so what I was telling is it was really wonderful to hear all the experts in the area of transmission and grid operation. It was Mr. Soni, Mr. Sehgal, Mr. Satnarayanan, Mr. Ajit, and all, and the kind of interactions and the kind of questions that was getting poured in the Q&A channels and otherwise. And that really goes as per my expectation as well. In fact, I had this in my mind that the moment we open this platform, there will be huge amount of queries, and we need to be on our toes to answer those queries. We should not sit idle and take longer time to respond to these queries, and whatever expectations are there from the stakeholders, all the kinds of stakeholders, I think we must resolve them at the earliest. And I really appreciate the suggestion that was given by Mr. Soni that we must have a suggestion button itself on the suggestion for the suggestion. So I think I'm sure that the Prayas team and CA team must have noted all the suggestions that have been given, and these suggestions definitely will be incorporated. And let's be a partner to development of this. Let's all the stakeholders. My once again appeal will be to all the stakeholders to please do keep on contributing. This is just the beginning, as I mentioned in my opening remark, and we'll continue to build up from where we have started as on today, and try to see that it really helps the transmission sector to develop further. With that, let me once again thank every one of you, the Prayas team, the CA team, the all the participants who have joined and tried to gain out of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And once again, I would just like to reiterate that this is just the beginning of this journey, and there is hard work to continue for years to come. We'll be on our toes, as you said, and we'll also reach out to our esteemed panelists as well as CA experts and sort of many participants who have also given excellent suggestions. So we'll also reach out to many of these experts to sort of address these data gaps and to keep it as updated as possible. So thank you so much, everyone, and especially participants also for sort of being there throughout this more than 1.5 hours. There have been more than 150 participants throughout this 1.5 hours of discussion. So that really shows the interest everyone has in this important sector. So thank you once again, and we'll be back to our work in terms of making the portal more and more useful for all stakeholders. So thank you so much. Last announcement, a recording of this sort of discussion will be available in few days on our website. We'll send email to that effect so that anybody can sort of go back to this discussion or share this discussion in their networks also. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.